Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to give people a few seconds to join. In the chat, if you want, you can tell us where you're joining from, which cities. Hello. Make sure that when you write something in the chat that you're selecting not just host and panelists, but everyone, so we can have a nice lively discussion. People from Houston, Lagos, Germany, amazing. Alrighty, so yeah, just throughout this session, we're going to have time at the end for a bit of a Q&A, so feel free to add your questions in the webinar chat or in the Q&A section, and at the end, I will have David answer these for you. All right, so that we don't have any more delays, I'm going to start us off. Welcome to today's Tigerhall webinar. Our session features David McVay, who is head of the Enterprise Growth Office at US Bank and a member of the ECLC, a global network of senior transformation leaders. Today's topic, from acquisition to belonging, the art of retaining talent in bolt-on deals. David, please take it away.
Hey, thanks, Julianne. Let me go ahead and share my slides with everybody. Okay, so in the next hour, I will provide a perspective on the single biggest reasons people walk out the door during a merger and convince you that it's entirely preventable. I once read an author who said, "Welcome to the big leagues of change management." And they were right. An acquisition will test your ability to manage change and influence how other people feel about change like nothing else. Just to put it into a little bit of context, let me give you the scale of M&A. 49,000 deals happen every year. 3.8 trillion in asset value changes hands annually. Finance and tech dominate these deals, which means most companies involve knowledge-based people. People, not machines, drive value. 44% of integrations are bolt-on, meaning the strategy is to add talent and capability to a larger business. And here's another twist. Private equity drives 30% of the activity, which means 3 in 10 companies will likely be back on the auction block 7 to 10 years later. All in all, it's an enormous amount of change. Businesses bought and sold, new owners looking for ways to earn back premiums they paid. And at the center of it all, people. How they experience this change determines whether the deal succeeds or fails. I've been doing this work for a long time. My current role, I'm part of US Bank's corporate strategy organization responsible for driving strategic execution and growth. I lead a team of very talented directors who deliver on the company's most critical initiatives, both organic and through acquisition. When it comes to M&A, 28 years of experience across 4 major financial companies, evaluating deals and leading integrations. My integration work spans core banking, credit and debit card payment technologies, and wealth management and custody businesses. So with that perspective, let me just frame up the conversation for today. Here's some of the things that I hope to answer today. So what's the problem? Well, you've probably already guessed. Every year, 3.8 trillion in M&A value changes hands. And the talent that built those businesses walk out the door at an alarming rate. I'll share some stats in a moment. They're staggering. Why do people leave? Well, sure, some senior leaders will exit by design. In fact, that's their plan. But for everyone else, the reasons are nuanced. On the surface, you might say, well, it was pay or opportunity or culture, or maybe it's some fit. But I'll tell you, after 28 years of doing this, I believe it comes down to pretty much one thing. People in the acquired company don't feel like they belong in that bigger company. And here's why. M&A transactions are inherently unfriendly to the acquired population. Lines get drawn early. Communication's often wrong. The process taps into some deep-seated fears like, I didn't sign up for this. They're different. I don't understand their lingo. It triggers sort of a flight response, and it gets worse when the buyer side behaviors reinforce division. Uh, I've seen my managers begin to posture because they feel threatened. Certainly, poor communication choices like us versus them. And suddenly people feel pretty anxious, and they're planning their exit. So what's the best retention strategy? First, let me just say I'm not an HR professional. I'm not a communications expert. What I can tell you is this: what stabilizes an organization is temporary. What keeps people engaged and helps the combined company grow is something different. And that's great communication. Stabilization is about hypercare. It's about making people feel cared for and trust. Long-term retention, on the other hand, is multifaceted. Strategies get applied over time, from the time the deal closes all the way through complete integration. I'll go deeper into some of the long-term retention strategies here shortly. Case studies, absolutely. I'll share two examples that show how a buyer strategy, the price they pay, and the integration plan all influence success or failure. Finally, I'll highlight a few tactics that we've seen work quite well, tactics that create belonging. One focuses on leadership, how leaders model behavior and maintain trust. The other one is about peer interactions, breaking down boundaries in ways that feel natural while respecting the differences in culture, history, and values between the two companies. As we go, I'd love to hear your feedback in the chat. As Julianne said, we got a couple of, we'll certainly have questions at the end, but we have some polls to guide the discussion. So maybe the first poll we'll get started with in terms of just your experience. Have you ever been in a company that announced an M&A transaction? Either never, my company was acquired, my company was a buyer, or maybe this is just old hat for you, and you've been part of multiple acquisitions. So maybe give us a couple minutes to think about where this group is. Yeah, so a lot of good experience. And that's not unusual. Estimates are that 1 in 3 have experienced their company going through an M&A transaction. For the 7% of you who've never done this before, let me narrate what an announcement usually looks like for an employee in an acquired company. So just imagine for a moment you work for a small boutique firm. It's a normal morning until an email hits your inbox. All of a sudden, you get an email that says all employees must assemble at 10 a.m. This is the highest priority. So you walk into a meeting room, everyone's there. It's buzzing with curiosity. The CEO steps up and drops the news. A larger company just bought us. He says, it's business as usual. There's a lot of things to work out. Nothing's been decided yet. And he adds that, oh, by the way, the management team will be part of the combined company. Next, some executives from the acquiring company jump up on stage. They talk about this grand new strategy. It's big picture stuff. It sort of feels a bit far away from what you do on a day-to-day basis. Then your HR leader jumps up on the stage, talks a little bit about some new benefits, mentions that there are going to be FAQs that will be emailed around later. CEO jumps back on stage, tells you that your manager will be in touch with you by the end of the day, and your manager will capture any questions that you have and try to get those answered. And just like that, the CEO and the new leadership leave. They're going to go take some calls with stakeholders and some media. The whole thing takes about 30 minutes. No real details, no clear answers. All you know is it's just change. So how do you feel? So next polling question. What's on your mind at this point? Is it, I need to get back to business as usual? Certainly happy that nothing's been decided yet. I'm glad the executives are staying on. Certainly want to learn more about the grand strategy. I want a copy of those HR FAQs. I want to hear what my manager has to say. And I want to know how this impacts me. So, what's on your mind? Yeah, exactly. It's this scenario isn't unusual. It happens all the time. In these initial meetings, no one ever talks about how the merger will impact employees. Employees are confused and anxious, wondering what it means about their job, about their future, about their team. Employees assume there will be mass firings. Until this question is answered, productivity and engagement hit rock bottom. The organization remains frozen until people know how the transaction will impact them. These are the air quotes me issues. We need to solve the me issues as quickly as possible. And it's exactly why communication, clarity, and connection matter so much in M&A. So let's keep moving on. After the merger, the numbers are sobering. Half of employees will leave in year one, 3 out of 4 by year three. These aren't outliers, they're typical. And here's the kicker: 61% say poor communication was the reason that they walked away. Think about that. We're keeping acquired employees in the dark for far too long, and they're leaving. And it's entirely preventable. Sure, there's some attrition to be expected for reasons that are not communication, such as, people didn't sign up for this sort of work. They didn't like maybe the new manager. There's a new direction that doesn't fit with their hopes and dreams, or maybe simply they just have a better offer. But poor communication, I mean, really, that should never be a reason why someone walks out the door. And I do want to be clear, it's not about the amount of communication. It's about whether the communication answers what the employees are really asking. Does it create trust? Does it respect their legacy? Does it feel fair? Does it help them navigate the new reality? Does it inspire them to engage and even advocate for the change? Or does it simply alienate them? I know what you're thinking, maybe, so do we just need better FAQs? No, facts are usually available. Then maybe we just send more emails. Absolutely not. That's the wrong kind of communication. The problem runs a lot deeper. Communication isn't about information, it's about connection. It needs to be one-on-one, or at least it needs to feel personal. It's about making people feel seen, valued, part of something bigger. So with that in mind, maybe we do one more poll. And this one's sort of the lead in, and I'll talk about each one of them. But I really sort of what do you think is the most effective retention strategy? Re-recruiting, total awards, talent development, performance management, leader modeling, peer interactions. What do you think?
We'll give it another minute or so that everyone can answer.
Yeah, and I know I haven't defined these yet, so I will define them. But I sort of just wanted to see where folks were thinking before we define each of these. Yeah, the research would say that they're all important. So sort of a trick question. Some are critically important to senior executives. Total rewards for the most senior executives are important. Talent development, yeah. So for younger colleagues, talent development, as an example, am I going to have the opportunity to grow? I'll talk a lot about leader modeling and peer interactions, which again, folks feel are important. I feel they're important as well. So I'll talk a lot about those. So yeah, let's jump into sort of a little bit of definition then around each of these. So, long-term retention doesn't happen by accident. It requires a deliberate, multi-pronged approach. So let me then define a little bit around each of these. So re-recruiting. Re-recruiting actually is critical. It's critical up front, and it should happen in every acquisition. Remember, employees didn't sign up to work for the acquired company, or the acquiring company, I should say. Take time to tell the story, why this deal matters, what the future looks like, and why they should want to be part of it. Every communication should carry an undercurrent of, here's why you belong here. In my early career, I will tell you, my company was acquired. I never did understand the new organization, how it was organized, where we fit. Don't let that happen. Make clarity and connection a priority by re-recruiting folks in that new company. Total rewards. I mentioned a little bit about this. This includes retention bonuses, and they can help in the short term, but it's not really a strategy. If it's all you do, engagement drops, people leave after their payday. Aligning compensation structures is important. It's often overlooked. Communicate early and plan carefully as you align compensation structures. Talent development. Show people that there are opportunities in the combined company. Share your philosophy on growth and career paths. Reassure employees that their extra effort can lead to advancement. Performance management. So this is really about how people are evaluated. Even little changes, address them early and remove that uncertainty. Leader modeling and peer interaction. So as I said, they deserve special attention because together they build connection, and with connection comes belonging. So I'll talk more about leader modeling, but essentially it's demonstrating behaviors that we want others to follow. It's leading by example and reducing uncertainty and building trust. Peer interactions create informal connections that help people navigate change. It's programs like ambassador networks that make that are intentional and effectively help cultures shift and come together. When all of these work together, employees move from that initial "I was just acquired" to where we really want them to be, "I belong," and that's the foundation of retention and cultural integration. So before I jump into a case study, let me briefly talk a little bit about the M&A process. Again, most of folks here, at least from the poll, have been involved. But let me just talk a little bit about the M&A life cycle. The M&A life cycle, sort of unfolds like this: strategy and targeting. Management generally defines an acquisition strategy and identifies a target company based on a transaction thesis that fits the current environment. And then deal execution. A deal team steps in to model the financials and value the target company. They conduct due diligence and they negotiate terms and conditions. And then an integration team takes over and implements the changes needed to achieve the deal's objectives. These steps aren't isolated, they're interdependent. Each sets the stage for the next. It's what we call the chain of success. If one link fails, the rest of the process suffers. Transaction performance is path dependent, often irreversible. In other words, even the best integration plan can't fix the fact that we overplayed for a deal or we had a flawed strategic decision. One more slide on theory. So let's look at how M&A strategies typically fall into a few archetypes. Essentially, these are combinations of strategy and integration approach. The four most common, first, transformational. These deals create something new and different for the combined customer base. One example, Salesforce acquired Slack in 2021. Before Slack, Salesforce was primarily a CRM database. After integrating Slack, customers could collaborate on opportunities on various accounts without ever leaving the Salesforce environment, fundamentally changing how work gets done on that platform. Holdings. Holdings, here's an undervalued company that gets acquired but not integrated, or at least the integration is very minimal. The acquirer adds capital, sometimes adds managerial expertise to help it grow. So a good example, Berkshire Hathaway is owner of Geico or Dairy Queen, both independent companies held under a common parent. Absorption. This is basically the opposite of holdings. It's full integration. The buyer's products and brand replaces the targets, often to achieve cost synergies and scale. An example, JP Morgan acquired First Republic Bank in 2023. The First Republic brand disappeared. All the deposits and assets were absorbed by JP Morgan Chase. Bolt-on, and I'll talk more about bolt-on here in a minute, but essentially it's a product extension. These deals add products or distribution channels to deepen relationships and expand offering. An example, Apple acquired Beats in 2014. Apple repositioned Beats Music into Apple Music and leveraged Beats' premium headset brand. More on this in the next case study. In practice, these strategies often blend. For instance, a bolt-on acquisition might absorb corporate functions like HR or finance while leaving product teams completely separate. So let's jump into our first case study, moving away from theory for a little bit. Let's start with two brands most people know, Apple and Beats. In 2014, Apple made a bold move to reshape its position in the music industry. At the time, streaming was exploding, growing 25% year over year, with revenue surpassing CD sales. The top three subscription services at the time were Spotify, Beats, and Rhapsody. You might know those names. Apple, however, was still focused on iTunes. iTunes was a download model and it was certainly losing favor at the time. Apple needed to pivot. That was their strategy. Enter the streaming business through acquisition. They chose Beats, buying both the music streaming business and the premium headset business. Apple paid 3 times Beats' billion-dollar valuation. Apple was confident in the combination, bringing Apple's brand power and distribution to Beats would certainly pay off, and it certainly did pay off. From an integration approach, Apple followed a bolt-on integration strategy. Beats retained its identity as a premium brand, and within 6 months, the rebranded streaming service launched as Apple Music, pre-installed on every iPhone. The Beats headphones got an upgraded Bluetooth technology while keeping their iconic design. The results were impressive and are still impressive. Apple Music now holds 31% market share. Beats headphones in the premium headset space command 30%, consistently ranked in the top 3. For Beats employees, the win was clear. The Beats Electronics business stayed intact, continuing to produce their headsets under their own brand. The Beats Music gained Apple's distribution, instantly reaching millions of users. And the leadership remained in place. Teams collaborate and continue to drive innovation. On the people front, just to give you a couple of numbers around this case study. So Beats had 700 employees at the time. Apple had about 92,000. And you might ask, were there layoffs? Yes, there were. Roughly 200 roles were mostly in HR, finance, and admin. But the core talent in the two businesses began working together. And this was a success. And why? Apple respected Beats' legacy, which is important, and gave leaders a voice and created collaboration as part of the bolt-on acquisition. So key takeaways for this case study: Apple didn't just buy a company, they built belonging. The Beats employees moved from we were acquired to now we're part of Apple, and they did that very quickly. Leadership continuity and collaboration drove stability. Cultural integration mattered. So let me just now go to another case study, and this one's a little bit closer to home. My team actually led this one, so I can go a little bit deeper into the tactics behind this acquisition. So U.S. Bank is the 5th largest bank in the country. We serve consumers, businesses, and institutions, both nationally and internationally. Among our institutional clients are public sector organizations. So think cities, counties, and states. These sorts of organizations, they have unique banking needs, but like consumers, they still collect revenue and they pay their bills and they have to manage their cash flow. They need bank accounts, but they also have strict rules governing how they invest excess funds. Historically, U.S. Bank had a gap in this area. We didn't offer investment products tailored to the public sector. That's where Public Finance Management, or PFM, came in. PFM was founded in 1975. PFM specialized in public entities and serving those public entities, building deep relationships across states, and creating investment processes that complied with their local regulations. To strengthen our position in the public banking sector, we acquired PFM Asset Management. At the time, PFM managed 161 billion in assets. It actually doubled our asset management business. We did pay a premium based on the assumption that the combining of our banking and our asset management capabilities would help us retain existing customers and certainly win new ones in the public sector. Our integration strategy focused on three priorities: preserve the expertise and relationships that PFM brings. PFM had decades of experience, and client trust was critical. We kept their identity intact initially, and we gradually introduced the U.S. Bank brand to their clients. We enhanced the client experience. We integrated their client-facing technology to give finance managers in our cities, counties, and states a seamless interface for both their banking and their asset management needs. And we drove growth through this combination. Combining the banking services and the investment capabilities positioned us as a one-stop solution for public sector clients. And here's where this integration really stands out. We did not lose a single person as part of the integration of PFM. Every team member stayed, and they stayed because we had a leader who focused on re-recruiting each individual, modeling the leadership traits we wanted our senior managers and middle managers to emulate, and implemented peer interactions that fostered positive cultural integration over time. These efforts didn't just keep people on board, they created a genuine sense of belonging to the larger U.S. Bank organization, helping employees see themselves as part of something bigger while maintaining pride in their long legacy that they built. So moving from case studies, let's talk a little bit about some very specific tactics. So how do we move people from thinking I was acquired to feeling I belong? Too often we hold on to boundaries that work against what we're trying to achieve. A common example, we talk and communicate in terms of I'm from company X and you're from company Y. I'll never forget leading an integration. I overheard someone say, they're so different. And I'll tell you, as an integration leader, that's a red flag because it signals division and not unity. The goal isn't just to combine operations, it's to create collaboration that feels natural. We acquire businesses to grow, but if we don't break down boundaries and biases, people end up feeling just separate and disconnected. That's why cultural integration matters as much as system integration, in fact. When we invest in re-recruiting people, modeling the right leadership behaviors, and creating peer connections, we do more than keep talent. We help every person see themselves as part of something bigger. That sense of belonging is what turns an acquisition into a shared success. So let me just talk again. I promised to talk about two tactics: leader modeling. Leader modeling is simple. It's about senior and middle managers showing the behaviors that we want others to follow. It's leading by example to reduce uncertainty and to reduce resistance. Leaders demonstrate calm, clarity, and collaboration. It signals stability. And that's really what people need during change. But here's the challenge. Middle managers often get left in the dark without clear information and without a role in the process. They can't advocate for change because they don't quite understand or they're unsure. This leaves their teams to also feel unsure. So, as change leaders, we need to give managers the confidence and tools to lead. So, what's that look like? Start with the me issues, re recruit your middle managers, help them understand their role and why their leadership matters for stability. Arm them with information, share manager specific details, not mass communications. Mass communications, I see this all the time. It needs to be tailored toward the manager that we're trying to, again, provide that information to. Give them a voice in the process. Make feedback normal, build structured conversations, help them in their own staff meetings so that they can ask people what their concerns are, sharing ideas, and then allow those middle managers to interact with the integration management office so that the integration management office can then again act on their feedback, show responsiveness, and show responsiveness to individual situations. Again, not just mass communications, but individualize that feedback. Create support channels, office hours, do road shows, conduct training, anything that helps managers feel equipped and connected. When managers feel informed and valued, they will lead with confidence. And when they lead with confidence, their teams feel like they belong, not just to their legacy organization, but to the whole larger organization. That's how we begin to move from I was acquired to I belong. So again, so now let's talk a little bit about peer interaction. Peer interactions are all about creating simple, meaningful connections so that people can learn, share, and feel supported. One tactic that we use is what we call our ambassador program, a structured way to make cultural integration personal. An ambassador is more than a buddy. They're a trusted peer. They're strategically selected and placed to help the acquired team navigate change and feel part of the larger organization. So again, how does this work? What makes our ambassador programs effective? So first of all, it's a respected role. Ambassadors are some of our best people. They're chosen for their credibility and their influence. Second, and this is important, non-threatening placement. They come from outside the acquired team's immediate area. They ensure, that they're neutral and they're open. So again, they don't create a threat to someone's role. It's simply just, I'm here to help you through the transition. We give our ambassadors formal training so that they understand what the acquisition is about, what are the goals, what are the objectives, and we make the assignment strategic. We place them where they'll have the most impact. So we put our ambassadors on the front lines to help frontline managers. We put them into the critical operations to help our operations managers. And we pair them up with key influencers in the acquired business. We give them a clear purpose, their single goal to help peers adjust and feel connected. And leadership endorsement. Ambassadors are introduced by leaders as a resource, not an authority. And this is important. They're a resource. They're a phone a friend, and that they're there to help, people overcome sort of the unknown. And we do structured check-ins. They meet with their peers at key milestones. As an example, shortly after closing, during systems transitions, and maybe even during facility moves if that's part of the integration. And then finally, our ambassadors are empowered to act. They can resolve issues, they can provide feedback, and they can provide feedback directly to the integration office. And what I'll tell you is the results speak for themselves. Our ambassadors volunteer to keep doing this work. Every acquisition, particularly in the core banking space, when our branch managers, they want to go help another branch manager through the transition. The repeat work for our ambassadors, they feel like they're really helping someone else transition successfully. And for the acquired team, these interactions, certainly create trust. They reduce the isolation. They build a sense of belonging to the larger organization. So let's a couple closing thoughts before we open it up for Q&A. Again, the scale of change today is staggering. 49,000 deals every year, moving 33.8 trillion in asset value. Most of it knowledge-based industries. 44% bolt-on, which means not just merging systems, we're merging people, cultures, and ways of working. And here's the hard truth: employees don't care about the deal size, they care about me issues. What does this mean for me? When those questions go unanswered, the fallout's severe. 50% of the acquired employees will leave in the first year, 75 by year 3. The number one reason: poor communication, cited by 61% of those that walk away. Retention isn't about a single announcement or a welcoming email. It's about multiple tactics applied consistently over time, because belonging doesn't happen overnight. We move people from "I was acquired" to "I belong." That means respecting the legacy that they bring and celebrating the future that you build together. And how do we make that happen? Leader tactics. Give leaders and managers the confidence to advocate. Model the behaviors that reduce uncertainty and build trust. Peer tactics. Make peer mentoring a badge of honor. Create ambassador programs and support mechanisms that connect people and foster cultural integration. And communication. For God's sakes, go beyond mass emails. Arm managers with information. Structure conversations. Respond quickly. Go shake hands with every buddy that you're acquiring. Somebody needs a handshake, a welcome to the business. When we combine these approaches, we don't just keep talent, we create culture where people feel valued, connected, and proud to be a part of something bigger. This is how we turn immense change into lasting success. And so with that, maybe we just open it up for some Q&A.
Thank you, David. So I've curated some of the questions we've had so far. Everybody, if you have more questions, please add them to the chat or the Q&A option, and I will have David respond to those too. So the first question we have is from Jackie. For the 50% leave in 1 year and the other stats that you showed us, are those stats on the acquired firm?
They're generally the vast majority are on the acquired firm. Again, there's a bit of a lopsided statistic in that those that are acquired are typically the ones that will leave much faster and in higher numbers. Certainly, they're in most all business, and our business is no different. We go through a process where we take a look at talent, particularly in roles that are overlapping. And select sort of the best qualified. And I encourage everybody to sort of go through that process. But yeah, the acquired firm, that's the number from the acquired firm.
Thank you. We also have a question from Brian. What specific challenges or insights do you have for a merger of equals as opposed to a pure hard acquisition?
Yeah, mergers of equals are a different animal. So let me just say that then they're just as hard as bolt-on acquisitions. Neither are easier or harder than the other, but there's different considerations for a merger of equals. When you think about platforms, so if you have two businesses that are relatively the same size, their management platforms, typically, are similar, and you have to choose which platform to sort of go with. And again, this is a whole nother webinar topic, but choosing a go-to platform is much harder than people think. I always advocate pick one. Don't try to merge two platforms. And then there's the whole question of how do I double pretty much every process, every part of my business, whether it be HR, finance, or operations, in a consolidated, consistent way to merge, two companies of the same size. Again, a whole different animal, and probably worth another webinar, in and of itself.
Thank you. Miret asks, among the 4 types of M&As, which do you find is the most challenging?
Oh, they all have their challenges. Transformational acquisitions, which a merger of equals would be, most likely a transformational acquisition. They tend to go longer. If you're in a regulated industry, they tend to take longer. to receive regulatory approval. They certainly cost more, which means I have more on the line in terms of risk, and certainly more people within the acquiring businesses involved. Now, you can do a bolt-on acquisition without really disrupting, a major business. A transformational acquisition, if you want to call it disruption, you are literally, moving on a different trajectory from a strategy perspective, which means whatever plans you had in place prior to that announcement have just sort of been upset. So the transformational acquisitions are certainly more complex.
Thank you. We have another one from Sharon. What are the common traits of successful acquisitions when headcount reduction is part of the strategy? Uncertainties are driven by potential job losses. So, what is the best way of communicating this?
Yeah, so typically when we think about an absorption type acquisition, where we're absorbing the acquired business into our own, and usually just presenting our existing products from the acquired business to the new customer base, that results in quite a lot of redundancies. And so when you think about how you approach an absorption, the communication strategy is different. You need to be upfront that is the strategy, and that in fact we are absorbing this business into our own business, and quite frankly, what becomes important there is really about fairness. And again, I mentioned a little bit about evaluating different individuals, for go forward roles. That process, when done transparently, with when someone feels like they got a fair shot at sort of a go forward role, then it goes much better than someone, in fact, if many people feel that they were shut out of that opportunity going forward, it's really, really doesn't go well. So, again, it's a different communication strategy, but transparency, fairness, so that, at the end of the day, there was a feeling of justice, that I got my fair shot at, the combined role. And, typically, when I see this done well, it's really about, everybody agrees that was the best choice for leadership going forward. That was the best choice to fill the role. Even those that, sort of didn't get the role understand what the choice and how that played out. And again, it's a different strategy, so it requires a bit of a different tactic. But again, it's more about being fair and transparent in the process, and how you're going forward.
Thank you. Claire asks, what do you do when these projects are under resourced, i.e., within the business in particular?
Yeah. So as a change leader, resourcing is important, right? So what I would say is, if your firm, if your firm's going on in an acquisition, and you're under resourcing the integration, that's a serious problem that needs to be raised, and it needs to be raised as early as possible, because again, most companies are putting a lot of money on the line, and an under-resourced integration is probably headed for failure, immediately. And what I tell my management team is, we need to over-resource these things, because again, you're the complexities that you're wading into, um, they won't go away. You need people to work through the issues. You need people to understand the risks. You need people to really wade into all the complexities that M&A brings.
Amazing. And Joseph has a question about timelines. So, what is the ideal timeline to be able to communicate an integration roadmap that covers cultural, tech system, and operational milestones?
Yeah, so typically what happens is, you form an integration team of team leads pretty early in the process, and we started during due diligence for sure, if not before that. So we start the planning process quite early, and we begin to communicate with leaders of both the acquiring and the acquired business on sort of what our approach to integration is going to be. And then you begin to fall into one of the four archetypes that I talked about. And then once you've decided from a strategic perspective, is this a bolt-on, is it an absorption, is it a transformational integration, then you can begin to sort of put together a specific approach for each of your work streams or functional areas, as well as your lines of business. And then it's about communicating transparently along the deal timeline. So when you think about pre-close, you don't want to sort of present everything up front because you probably don't know everything up front. But you do want to be transparent in that these are the decisions or the guardrails that we've set up. And these are the timelines in which we'll arrive at all of the decisions. And being transparent with folks goes a long way. People understand that things are complex, that it takes time to work through the details of combining operations, or whether a brand will sort of stay in place, or how marketing is going to work. All of that complexity needs time to work through. So typically what we say is once we've announced the deal, we give ourselves 60 to 90 days to come back with a fairly mid-level plan. And sort of that mid-level plan, we do want to communicate to all of our leaders and to all of our managers. And again, it's back to arming them with the talking points so that they can begin to advocate for the change that needs to be put in place. And so that 60 to 90 days after a public announcement is an important timeline for us because it's quick enough that people understand that's the timeline that's going to take to get through these complexities. But it's enough time to have those workshops, get leaders from both organizations together to talk about the complexities and come to some reasonable high-level conclusions on the direction we're going. And it gives you the ability to go back. Now, what I'll say is a continued conversation about the specifics of each individual function, each individual business should continue to occur. As planning develops, it gets more crystallized. And then certainly as you begin to execute, communication becomes important. And we're all change leaders, and you understand sort of the importance of communication as you begin to actually enact the change.
Thank you. We'll do one last question. This one's from Lisa. How quickly does the ambassador program get kicked off after the acquisition closes? I'd love to implement this program in an upcoming integration and would love to understand how quickly a program like this could be stood up.
Yeah, so a great question. So our ambassador program, is triggered, with public announcement, as you would imagine. An announcement becomes public. And our ambassadors are already calling, trying to get in, a role, into the acquisition. Again, particularly in our case, in the retail and core banking acquisitions that we do. And so, as part of our integration planning, one of the work streams is our ambassador program. And someone takes the ambassador program and begins to develop, what's the strategy behind it. Where are the key points of influence in the acquired company? Who's going to be their ambassador, and when do we make those introductions? And so, what I would tell you is, after public announcement, you need sort of two tracks. One is, certainly the hypercare that I talked about for the acquired employees, but the next track is getting your ambassadors mobilized, and then at some point, usually 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, you begin to introduce your ambassadors to key folks within the acquired institution. And again, that can vary depending on, what's going on within sort of that acquired business from, first of all, have you closed the deal yet? Is there regulatory approval required? But there's other things, that can influence that as well. But you'd like to make those introductions, as quickly as possible after public announcement.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for this webinar today. Thank you, everybody who decided to come end of year and join us for this last webinar of the year. We'll be sending more webinars your way, but thank you so much, David.
Yeah, and I'd say thank you for having me. And certainly, if anyone wants to dive deeper, this is my passion. Find me on LinkedIn. So thank you so very much for your time.